tooth and nail because they don't know how to live any other way, and they'll have to be removed. But the consensus to do that will be far greater post-disclosure than it is now.
Now, can I ask you just a question? If there is aliens, and let's put it this way, maybe the government it came to a point like Stephen Hawking, telling all the world leaders, stop sending our address out in space because we could get visited by a race that, could not be friendly towards Earth. And, I always look at, maybe it's moving forward more because maybe we made that mistake already. And the government knows that something is, frying in the pan. And, again, that might be a good way, though, to come out and be clean about it and probably get all the countries kind of unite, just like World War II when we united with Russia and, all these Turkey and all these countries, maybe, I don't know. I don't trust the government. That's as simple as that. I just don't trust them.
Well, first of all, there's limited evidence for that. Second of all, if in fact there is an extraterrestrial threat, we're screwed. There's not a damn thing we can do about it. So just put that off the side. It's a non-factor. We can't defend, and we would never be allowed to get to the point where we could defend. If you are threatening someone, or you have very evil intentions on some planet or global civilization, you are not going to allow them to become a worthy adversary. And they can destroy us anytime they want. So that's pointless. And there's very little evidence for that scenario, meaning the reason we haven't told you the truth is because there's some awful, awful, terrible truth and you can't handle it. My answer to them is, well, what is it about you, General, or you, Undersecretary of Extraterrestrial Affairs in the CIA, what is it about you that makes you able to carry that burden that we can't carry? Are you super beings? Are you special in some way? If there is a burden of that magnitude, why don't you share it with the rest of us, the other 7 billion plus, and we will help carry that burden for you. It's a bogus argument. It's not true, I do not think, and I don't invest in it much.
Okay.
To be honest.
Okay, I just know how politicians are, and I know how the military is. So if something did go down, I mean, they could make it go so much worse than, just because of how they run everything. And that goes back again to with, failing to tell, the American public anything. I mean, what they tell you is so much untruth on almost everything you hear. We have a politician running our government. It says all the news is fake from the news sources. But then you look at the other side and say, well, hey, why are all these government officials running all these offices at the government, resigning or being fired because they won't do what they're being told to do? Maybe they're morals.
Well, look, you don't want to invest too much in the immediate circumstances we're dealing with. They're extremely abnormal, and they'll be resolved, I think, fairly soon. I would rather focus on the longer-term problem, the truth embargo, and also the institutional lying and what have you. Admittedly, things have magnified of late to rather rapid acceleration. I'm not saying it's not connected to the decades of institutional lying that came before it. But this is a spike. It's not a long-term trend. This is a spike. Kind of like you've got a disease and your immune system gets a little compromised and it really flares up, and then your body will deal with it and bring it back, and you'll get a little more stable. So I try not to invest in railing over the certainly as part of my advocacy, the bizarre events and things that are being said and done right now, because I know that they will be resolved unless the country's immune system is so compromised, that this current cancer will metastasize and take it down. I don't see that yet, but some are worried about that. So the amount of lying going on right now is off the charts, but it's a spike. It's not really representative of the fundamental trend that's also a problem. So the question is, after this has been resolved, we can return to business as usual, which is substantial institutional lying in service to long agendas that frankly no longer make sense anymore. Or we can make a radical move, and disclosure is that radical move. But disclosure is not going to happen until the political situation in America right now is resolved.
Now, hey, Steve.
Unless it comes from outside the country.
Now, Steve, I'm going to take a real quick call from my Sunday host. I think he has a question he wants to ask you. Hey, Michael, are you out there? Yeah, are you out there, Michael?
Yes, Gary, I'm here.
Yeah, hey, Steve, this is Michael W. Hall. He's known as the paranormal lawyer. He is a practicing lawyer in the state of Washington, and I know he really looks up to what you've been doing. Go ahead, Michael, and ask Steve some questions here.
Oh, this is a real honor for me, Steve. So I'm a big fan and try to be an advocate as you have been all these years. The moniker the paranormal lawyer has kind of been stuck on me after so many years representing paranormal clients and UFO researchers like Peter Davenport and Dr. Richard Haynes and those kind of folks. Mm-hmm. But my question to you right off the bat would be, when that actual confirmation from the U.S. government came out, December 16th of last year, that UFOs actually do exist, did you feel a little pride and confirmation yourself that I've been telling you this for years?
That was not a confirmation from the government per se. It wasn't about UFOs exist. The government has acknowledged in the past that UFOs exist. That's not. It's a pointless statement, but it serves them very well. They can't say extraterrestrials exist, but the fact that there's unidentified objects in the sky, that's obvious. That's a tautology. I mean, not a tautology, but I mean it's a certainty. Everybody knows that. So they've said that. So that's not what happened there. What happened in the New York Times is actually the result of a very long and elaborate, complex project underway that goes all the way back to early 2015, which is part of my current presentation, which is now up to 3 hours plus, and I hope to soon film it all so that I can get it out to a much broader audience. I've done 18 lectures, 19 lectures at 13 conferences this year, and I've been working this presentation up, developing it further and further. And a key part of the presentation is devoted to the To the Stars Academy of Arts and Sciences, launched formally on October 11th, 2017, announced, or at least hinted at, or prefaced in an interview in March 27, 2016, between George Knapp and Tom DeLonge, the musician Tom DeLonge. And what has happened is that, in a few words, as I see it, I'm happy to be corrected by anyone inside that wishes to step forward and say, you don't have it right, Steve, here's what really happened. But I like my analysis, and that is that in early 2015, persons inside the military intelligence complex, which would include certainly the CIA and the DOD, and possibly in some government corporate contractors, maybe even NASA, who know that there's an extraterrestrial presence, and I assure you there's a lot of people inside our government that knows this. They're not saying anything, and they're certainly not saying anything publicly. They looked out their windows and saw two very significant things. One, and PRG is responsible for this, they were seeing scores and scores of articles being written about the presumptive president, candidate Hillary Clinton, and her connection and the connection of her political team to the ET issue. one after another. Eventually, there was about 400. In other words, the cat was out of the bag, the horse was out of the barn, the toothpaste was out of the tube, and anything could happen. It could come up in the debates, it could explode into a major story, given the context, and who knows, it could force disclosure from the current president, which would have been Barack Obama. So they're seeing that. More importantly, they're seeing that the Clinton team is actually responding to the subject under pressure from reporters who want answers, but they're not giving them any answers. They're stonewalling them, trying to hold off the wolves at the door. So they had to start responding, and they did start talking about it in talk shows here and there. Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, John Podesta, and Barack Obama were all speaking to the ET issue 11 times during the campaign. And they concluded that Hillary Clinton was going to disclose once she became president, and quickly, thus securing the legacy that was denied her husband back in his first term, when Lawrence Rockefeller tried to move him forward to full disclosure, including the release of the files, and he was stopped by the military intelligence complex. He was stonewalled and run around in circles and denied that legacy, and she was going to take it. And that created a real problem for them. They are good people, they're national security people, and they've been defending the country, but they knew what was going to happen if disclosure were to come from Hillary Clinton and the new President Clinton, let alone from another head of state like Vladimir Putin. And what was going to happen was that the politicians would get the glory, they would bask in adulation of the public, and then they would throw the military intelligence complex under the bus. Meaning, they wouldn't tell us, they stonewalled us, they lied, it's their fault, we wanted to, blah, blah, blah. And they didn't like that. And so somehow a substantial number of them were able to create a project which ultimately was going to be headed by, at least the public spokesperson, was going to be Tom DeLonge, a popular musician, autodidact, lots of money, can travel, and it's got a big following around the world because he sold 30 million records. But ultimately it would be a team of people that would be out of government. They'd be retired, but they would make up a team that was going to bring information to the public and demonstrate for PR purposes that the military intelligence complex essentially wants to be part of the solution, not the problem, and thus get ahead of the issue so that when disclosure came, they were not going to get thrown under the bus. This was a classic public relations maneuver, and that is what set that in motion. However, Clinton didn't win, and that created a huge problem for this project, but it had already been mentioned. It was already in play to some degree, and so ultimately, after about 11 months, they decided to go ahead and announce it in October of 2017. Then, as part of this complex, elaborate, and well-thought-through initiative, they agreed to a series of interviews with the New York Times, providing the Times with a basis for some very interesting stories, which after the Times vetted those interviews and vetted the information, they went and proceeded and wrote those stories on October the 16th, which included the release for the very first time of gun camera footage of UAP intercepts by our military planes, which have all been kept absolutely, completely out of the public domain, except for one, I think, misrelease. It was kind of a screw-up, and a little bit got out. This is unprecedented. No nation has ever done this, and here the U.S. did it, and that was the article that appeared in the New York Times, including the pilot, and then they announced that there had been a study and all of that. And people can find all of this on my website, paradigmresearchgroup.org, where I have information about all of that in several locations, and they could also learn about it by going to the To the Stars Academy of Arts and Science. Just Google To the Stars Academy. So what you have there is not a formal confirmation by the government, and it's certainly not a confirmation of UFOs. We already know that. What you have is a proactive effort by a segment of the military intelligence community, which somehow got authorization or got the room to maneuver this project into the public domain. We do not know how that happened. Who authorized it, how it was clear, we don't know. And as a result, the military intelligence complex is now leading the disclosure advocacy movement.